In the previous video, I presented David Hume's argument that one cannot derive a prescriptive ought conclusion from a set of descriptive is premises. But there's an exception. That exception is known as the hypothetical imperative. So what on earth is a hypothetical imperative? Well, a hypothetical imperative is an imperative. That is, it's a statement about what ought or should be done. For example, the statement that you should not put your hand in a hot fire, that's an imperative. It tells you what not to do. You might respond to this statement by asking, why not? A hypothetical imperative is conditional. It depends on having a particular goal or end, or on satisfying a particular want or interest. As a matter of fact, a fact known to science, putting one's hand in a hot fire tends to cause serious burns. It is also an empirical fact known to science that these serious burns are extremely painful. And by painful, I mean that it creates a sensation that people generally tend to have a very strong want or interest in avoiding. If you're one of these people who have a natural goal of avoiding extremely painful burns, then it's recommended that you not put your hand in a hot fire. And if you accept this advice, then one of the many potential sources of serious burns can be avoided. Notice that both of these are purely factual premises, known to science and verified as true by observation. Neither of them is saying anything about how the world should be. They're describing how the world is. And yet these descriptive premises give us an ought conclusion, a prescription, a recommended course of action. Granted, it applies only to the person who wants to avoid getting serious burns, but it is a valid inference from is premises to an ought conclusion. So how does this argument avoid Hume's thesis that one can't derive prescriptive conclusions from descriptive premises? Well, it's because the ought conclusion in this case is really an is statement in disguise. What it really says is that there is a reason for the agent to avoid putting their hand in a hot fire. And what this means is that the agent has a desire that would be served by keeping their hands out of hot fires. In this case, it's the agent's desire that they not experience the pain of a severe burn. In this argument, the two premises, that the agent has a desire to avoid serious burns, and that this desire can be served by keeping their hands out of a hot fire, does support the conclusion that the agent has a desire that would be served by keeping their hands out of a hot fire. An important fact about hypothetical oughts is that they apply only to the entities that have the relevant wants or interests. An agent in our case has a reason not to put their hand in a hot fire. Nobody else has a reason to do anything. Based on this argument, what other people should or should not do, in this sense of should, depends on their wants and desires. This should give you an idea of what a hypothetical imperative is. It's an ought that's based on a want or desire and applies only to the person who has that want or desire. However, as is often the case, you can have a reason to do something, and you can have even stronger reasons not to do it. For example, you can have a reason to have that third slice of chocolate cake. It tastes delicious and you would really enjoy eating it. But at the same time, you can have reasons not to eat the chocolate cake. Health reasons, for example. Now, have you ever had an important decision to make where you carefully weighed the reasons to do something and the reasons not to do it? Perhaps you're considering 2 job offers, or what you're going to study in college. One way to do this is to make 2 lists, a list of pros and a list of cons. Each item on the list is a reason to perform or not perform some action. These are what are called pro-tanto reasons or pro-tanto oughts. They provide reason to perform or not perform some action, but they're not decisive. They weigh in favor or against, but they can be outweighed by even more or stronger reasons on the other side. Then you make a decision. This decision is an all things considered ought. One weighs each of the pro-tanto oughts, putting each on the scale on the relevant side representing its actual weight, and then the judgment depends on which side one finds the greatest overall weight. The hypothetical oughts we talked about in the first part of this video are not all things considered oughts. They're pro-tanto oughts. They provide a reason to perform or not perform some action, but they're not a decisive reason. For example, an interest in avoiding severe pain is a reason to avoid hot fire. However, if you need to rush into a burning building to save your child's life, your interest in avoiding serious pain can be outweighed by an even stronger interest in saving the child's life. Even though you have a reason not to enter the building based on your wants and interests, you have an even stronger reason to rush in and retrieve the child. So here's what I want to make sure you understand out of this video. The first is that a hypothetical ought, an ought conclusion that is derived from an agent's wants or desires, is an exception to Hume's principle that no ought conclusion can be derived from purely factual premises. But it does require that one of the factual premises identifies a want or desire, like an agent's desire to avoid pain. Furthermore, that these ought conclusions are pro-tanto oughts, not all things considered oughts. They support the claim that there's a reason to do something, but that reason can be overridden by even stronger reasons not to.